Hi David, welcome to the show.
Hey Jamie, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Today we're talking about electrolytes, but not the type that hydrates me for my marathon training. Instead, we're talking about a unique electrolyte solution that could power the batteries of our future. David Mackinac, the CEO and co-founder of Anthro Energy, joins me to clear up many electrolyte myths and facts. He also talks through their story, their future, and their unique drop-in solid electrolyte solution. Finally, as always, he answers a few questions from you, our battery community. We hope you enjoy. Yeah, thank you. This is excited for this one. When we put some questions out to the community, we had a good influx of questions, so I'm excited to go through those later. So yeah, thank you for coming on.
Well, people, I guess, want to know more about electrolytes, and I'm excited to be here to talk about them.
Well, we have no one better to talk through it, and it kind of suits quite nicely for the slightly new structure where we start with myths and facts on your kind of real area of expertise. So we'll go into that first, then we'll talk about kind of Anthro and get deep into electrolytes and questions from the community as I mentioned. So yeah, the first one to kind of clear some things up for us, David. Myth or fact? Is electrolyte the same thing as an acid battery?
I'm guilty of this one myself. You know, when I'm telling people who don't know anything about batteries what an electrolyte is, I say sometimes people refer to this as battery acid. People are familiar with these AA or AAA batteries around the house. They kind of leak battery acid. And so even if people aren't battery experts, they know what battery acid is. And battery acid is actually the electrolyte that's used for things like lead acid batteries. It's normally sulfuric acid. So that is one example of electrolyte, but it's quite different than the electrolyte that's used in lithium-ion batteries. And so that's a partial truth. Yes, battery acid is a type of electrolyte, but it is not every electrolyte is battery acid.
Nice, easy one for you to begin with. The next one, batteries with the same cathode and anode chemistries use the same electrolytes.
Yeah, one of the things that I have been surprised to learn over time is that the range of electrolytes used in batteries vary significantly, even for chemistries and cell types that look very similar from the outside. And so if you look across different manufacturers and different applications for even similar cell types like NMC graphite batteries, you'll see a really wide range of electrolytes being used. And so there's not a kind of single dominant electrolyte formulation, even within a specific battery chemistry, which is quite interesting. And it really shows how tuning the electrolyte can unlock kind of different properties or different characteristics, even if a battery cell has the same chemistry as a different cell.
Onto polymer electrolytes. So this one is polymer electrolytes are not suitable for use in EV and other high-performance applications.
Yeah, we'll be talking about polymer electrolytes a lot today. They're near and dear to my heart and is one of the focuses of what we do at Anthro. And one of the things that people will often assume is that these sort of polymer-based electrolytes can't be used in EVs. But actually, there is a European company that demonstrated and commercialized a kind of polymer electrolyte that was used in e-bus applications and in small-scale EV applications over the past 2 decades. And so even though these technologies have not yet been adopted kind of widespread, there is evidence that these types of electrolytes are suitable for these mobility applications.
For the future as well, you see that expanding potentially. Are there other polymers, other electrolytes that could be better suited for high energy applications?
My perspective is that there's no kind of right or wrong electrolyte for any given application. Of course, regardless of the type of electrolyte you're using, whether it's a polymer or a liquid or a ceramic, the properties of that electrolyte will need to be tuned to meet the needs of the specific application. And so I think it's hard to say, what's the ideal electrolyte for any given application. It really depends on a intersection between the design of the cell, the application's needs, and the electrolyte formulation or composition.
I should have mentioned at the beginning to all of our listeners that Dave is a little bit under the weather today. So thank you for coming on and taking charge regardless.
I apologize. Thanks. Please bear with me. I've got a little bit of a cold.
Thank you for taking charge anyway. The next one. Lithium-ion batteries are dangerous because they leak harmful chemicals like electrolyte, similar to what we talked about before.
Yeah, there's that one's mostly fact. I mean, lithium-ion batteries, by and large, are quite safe, but they are not completely safe. And one of the reasons lithium-ion batteries can be unsafe to the touch is if they do kind of get cracked open and start leaking this electrolyte. It's not something that you typically want to touch or ingest in any way. And so that is one thing that causes batteries to be unsafe. And then, of course, batteries typically have kind of this thermal runaway behavior. And so, you'll see on labels on all of your batteries that you don't want to get them hot or set them on fire or set them near anything that's getting hot. And so it is important to practice extra precaution when handling lithium-ion batteries, especially ones that might be damaged or destroyed and might have some of that electrolyte leaking out of them.
This is a slightly fun one, and one that I guess if you speak to somebody who's not necessarily a battery expert and you mention electrolytes, that they think about food or kind of supplements in drinks. And something that I've been consuming of a lot, given my marathon training pretty soon, the Barcelona Marathon. So this one is, what is the difference between electrolyte, the food source, versus Anthro electrolyte batteries?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's the other thing that people think when I say we work on electrolytes. They say, is that Gatorade? Between a lithium-ion battery and a conventional electrolyte, they are quite different. So the electrolyte that you'll get from something like Gatorade is something like a salt dissolved in water, and the salt will typically be a sodium salt or a potassium salt. Those are the things that your body needs to kind of hydrate itself and make sure you're uptaking enough water. For a battery, the electrolyte is typically a salt as well, dissolved in what's usually an organic solvent. So this is some sort of chemical compound that you wouldn't want to drink because it's not based on water. And the salt is typically a lithium salt for a lithium-ion battery or sodium salt for a sodium-ion battery. And so the term electrolyte really just means that it is a medium that can transport ions, and those ions are dissociated salts. And so while they are kind of compositionally a dissolved salt, the sports drink electrolyte is something that is really biocompatible and helps you absorb more water, whereas the battery electrolyte is not something that you'd want to ingest typically. And of course, is focused on making sure the battery can operate and charge and discharge.
Both good for energy, but you don't want to mix them up, basically.
That's a good way to look at it.
Nice. And then battery gassing or swelling is due solely to liquid electrolyte decomposition. Myth or fact?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a myth as well. So a lot of times when you see a battery kind of towards the end of its life, it will puff up. And so if you have an old electronic device, you might see that the battery case is swollen and gassed. And a lot of that gassing is due to the fact that the liquid electrolyte decomposes inside the battery, and that creates kind of some gas and it creates the swelling. But during charge and discharge, most battery materials will often evolve some oxygen or some other gases from the electrodes, specifically the cathode material. And so a long way to say that there are many sources of things that can gas and create this swelling effect inside batteries that don't come just from the electrolyte. And so eliminating that problem of swell, which is, of course, a safety and performance concern, requires development of technologies kind of to solve the problem from many angles.
And the last one, David, which takes us quite nicely onto the rest of the conversation, myth or fact: solid state batteries are slower at charging and discharging than normal traditional batteries.
Yeah, that's a great one. That one might be sort of, in general, a fact, but overall, that's a myth. There have been several companies and research demonstrations that have shown that solid-state batteries can actually have very good rate performance and even superior rate performance than conventional liquid electrolytes. And so, while historically, on average, liquid electrolytes typically are faster than solid or semi-solid electrolytes, it really depends on the exact formulation, the exact processing condition. And of course, these next generation electrolytes are improving every day. And so at this point, we can't say explicitly that all liquid electrolytes have better charge and discharge rates than solid electrolytes, which is exciting for the industry and for pushing this technology forward.
Let's talk about your story. You've received some really good press over the years, and congratulations on the achievements, which we'll go through. But we're giving our listeners and viewers access to hearing from you exactly on kind of what the story has been. So David, talk us through the story so far of Anthro Energy.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I'm excited to share a little bit more about the story of Anthro. Anthro is a Stanford University spin out, and that's where I did my PhD in chemical engineering. I was advised by Professor Jianan Bao and Professor Yi Cui. Jianan Bao is known for working on advanced polymer materials, and Yi Cui is known for being an expert battery scientist. And so what I really was focused on in my PhD was taking the most advanced polymer materials being developed in Jianan's group and using them for applications in lithium-ion batteries. And so I was able to use these polymers to do a wide range of things, including creating next-generation binders and polymer-based electrolytes. And I was able to apply them to a wide range of battery chemistries, ranging from lithium metal batteries to silicon batteries to conventional batteries, to even these weird batteries that were kind of bendable, stretchable, and flexible. So these batteries that had really unique form factors. And I was really excited by the performance and the advanced features that these polymers could impart into next generation batteries. And I saw a lot of promise in this technology. And that gave me this desire to kind of spin Anthro out and take some of that polymer technology and try to commercialize it by forming a startup. One thing along the way that I noticed that was really difficult was that even though we were able to create these batteries with all of these awesome performance parameters, is that it was really hard to scale up battery technology, and it's really hard to convince people to change over their existing manufacturing line. And so when we started out at Anthro, we wanted to make sure that we were able to develop technologies that not only enable the creation of these novel improved batteries, but also can be manufactured at a mass scale. And so that's really what launched the development of our new technology, which is called Anthro Proteus, and kind of served as the baseline for not only introducing these advanced polymer materials into next generation batteries, but also making sure we're doing so in a way that's highly manufacturable in sort of a drop-in replacement for normal electrolytes.
You mentioned Anthro Proteus. So give us an introduction into it. Kind of how does it work, and why is it different?
Yeah, thanks for that. So Anthro Proteus, we call it a new class of polymer electrolytes. It's an injectable phase change electrolyte. And so, as I mentioned, historically, a lot of people trying to do next generation polymer electrolytes or next generation ceramic electrolytes, whether it's solid state or semi-solid state, require developing a new manufacturing process. And so what that typically looks like is you'll coat a cathode, coat an anode, and then coat a separator layer, and then you will stack all those layers on top of each other and then try to package them to form this complete battery. And that's a little bit different than what happens in a conventional battery, where you'll kind of coat these layers separately, wind them up on a winder, and then you inject this liquid electrolyte. And so stacking up these kind of solid or semi-solid layers that are not as mechanically robust is quite challenging. And so it also creates a number of performance issues, such as interfacial resistance and the need for external pressure to kind of make sure those layers stick to each other in the battery. What Anthro Proteus is something that allows for the creation of those polymer electrolytes without having to change the manufacturing process. And so the way Anthro Proteus works is we actually formulate this as a series of liquid precursors. We inject the liquid precursors into a mostly complete battery cell, just like you would inject a normal liquid electrolyte. Those liquid precursors wet out the entirety of the cell. And then during the standard battery formation process, we've developed a method to induce the liquid to solid phase transition inside the cell. And so that allows us to polymerize this electrolyte, allowing it to solidify, imparting a lot of the features of including improved safety, improved stability, and longer cycle life without having to change the manufacturing process at all. Because this liquid material in the pre-polymerized state also wets out the cathode and the anode and the separator, it solves a number of these performance issues. First of all, it doesn't have that interfacial resistance problem because it's polymerized across the separator electrode interface. Because it also has that interfacial polymerization, we don't need external pressure on the battery, and so this battery can cycle without external pressure. And then furthermore, we don't need to change any part of the battery manufacturing process because this material actually forms kind of a secondary binder network within the electrodes. And so we don't need to mix these polymers into the cathode or the anode before we do the manufacturing process. And so it really allows us to create these next generation batteries using conventional manufacturing processes and it impart this kind of in a 100% drop-in fashion.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of many benefits to that. I was just thinking as you were talking through that, why it hasn't been done before. Is today and the technology we have today a reason for that, or is it just because you went around before now?
There have been attempts to do things kind of like what we're doing. There's a couple of key innovations that have unlocked this. So the first is the polymer material set itself. And so the polymer materials that we use have a unique combination of ion conductivity, mechanical strength, and improved safety. And these polymer materials were things that were developed during my time at Stanford, during my PhD, as well as the time before I was there by previous researchers. And so these advanced polymer materials were really cutting edge and hadn't been discovered before. And then the second piece is the processing. And so how do we actually do this formation, polymerization process? How do we actually get this electrolyte to wet out the cell in the liquid form and all of those sorts of things? And so while people had tried sort of variations on this theme, there was nothing that really had demonstrated kind of the mechanical integrity, the safety, and the performance profile that we've been able to deliver. And even the attempts that had been done at kind of this injectable phase change system are relatively recent. It's a technology that has been around for less than 10 years, even being considered. And so it is something that is really new. And as far as I know, we are kind of at the forefront of commercializing this injectable phase change system.
And on that, so congratulations on the recent funding that's been obviously well advertised. So the DOE funding, I think it was about 25 million, and the federal tax credits, I guess around 18, 19 million. So what does that mean for you now, and kind of how does that affect your plans moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, one of the things that we're really excited about with this Anthro system is it's really scalable and, again, can be easily introduced into normal manufacturing lines. And so based on that, we've received a significant amount of customer demand and significant amount of validation from external customers that this is something that can be utilized on normal manufacturing lines. And so to that end, we have developed a multi-year plan to scale up this technology and to be a domestic manufacturer of these next generation electrolyte materials. And fortunately, the Department of Energy, as well as the Department of Defense, have recognized the need for this technology, and we've been able to pull down some substantial grant funding. And so between the grants and the tax credits, we have $43 million to invest in a large-scale production facility for Anthro electrolytes. And so we will be scaling this up, producing tens of gigawatt hours worth of this battery material in the United States, which will allow us to introduce this electrolyte into the mass market.
We have a lot of amazing guests on the show. We've got incredible technologies, and there's amazing value add in all of their technology, but to actually achieve that kind of customer attraction and have those kind of orders is super difficult, especially in today's landscape. So congratulations on that. You were kind of talking about plans. So if you were to paint a perfect picture of how Anthro will look in 5 years' time, how will it look? Talk us through it.
Yeah, so in 5 years, there's a couple of things that Anthro will have done or will be doing. The first is this piece that I talked to you about being kind of the premier large-scale manufacturer of advanced electrolytes in the United States. This is sort of an opportunity for us not only to be one of the first U.S.-owned and operated electrolyte manufacturers, but also to be the first manufacturer of these next-generation electrolytes. So we think that's really important to drive the battery industry forward. At the same time, in 5 years, Anthro will continue to demonstrate how our electrolytes can unlock next-generation battery technologies and enable new categories and new performance paradigms for lithium-ion batteries. And so, of course, we want to make batteries of today better by making them safer, making them more durable, making them longer lasting. But we also want to continue to unlock the next generation of batteries that wouldn't be possible using a conventional liquid electrolyte. And so if we think about things like high silicon content anodes that need mechanical and electrochemical stimulation, or mechanical and electrochemical stabilization that a polymer electrolyte can provide. We think about lithium metal anodes that have pretty severe safety issues and capacity fade issues. We also think about high voltage cathodes. And then beyond all of those things, we also want to showcase how our materials that make batteries safer, more structurally robust, can unlock new battery form factors. We've demonstrated some use of these flexible and bendable batteries, as well as batteries that are extremely structurally strong and can be fabricated in kind of curved shapes to put energy in more places. And so while Anthro's focus will be primarily on electrolyte production, we will also continue to showcase how these electrolytes unlock new battery applications that can be manufactured at a large scale.
Very nice. Well, hopefully that becomes a reality, David. And then, you mentioned they're bendable batteries. We're moving on to questions from the community now. One of these questions was actually from a former guest who focused on flexible and bendable batteries. So we'll get into that one. The first question, though, is around application areas, as you mentioned. So this person has asked, I see online that you work with automakers, consumer electronics, and defense companies. Where do you see the fastest path to mass adoption? And what's the biggest hurdle in scaling this technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the great things about Anthro Proteus electrolyte is that it's truly drop-in, and it's applicable to batteries of any size, any shape, or any chemistry. And so we really can put this in a huge range of cell types. We've done coin cells, pouch cells, cylindrical cells, ranging from 10 milliamp hours to 20 amp hours and beyond. And so we can showcase that ability to go into a lot of different applications. And then we've done over a dozen different kind of cell chemistries at the cathode and anode, and shown that Proteus can provide advantages to those systems. And so that gives us an awesome opportunity to work with a wide range of customers. In terms of the fastest path to adoption, we're really initially focused on the markets of the defense industry. We have quite close relationships within the Department of Defense, as well as specialty consumer electronics that really need some of the advantages that Anthro's electrolyte can provide in terms of improved safety, eliminating swell, and increasing the stability of the battery cell. And so I do think that those kind of smaller scale markets of defense and specialty consumer electronics will be the fastest path to market for us. And then the second part of that question was, what's the biggest hurdle to scaling up? Again, we've been fortunate to demonstrate that this is a highly drop-in technology that can be utilized by our manufacturing partners. When we start thinking about those larger scale applications, one of the hurdles to scaling up is that it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, where the large scale producers don't want to use it until it's been manufactured and demonstrated on a large scale, but it can't be manufactured and demonstrated on a large scale until it's been scaled up. And so, we think that we have a good strategy of starting small and using that to validate the technology, but at the same time scaling up our production so that we can alleviate those concerns at the large scale.
I was just thinking there as you were talking, you obviously have a very niche technology, but ultimately the application area is broad. So, regardless of where the adoption is across the world, there's been question marks around EV adoption. EVTOL is obviously super cool, but how much will that grow? And but as you say, if it's compatible with many different batteries and therefore size and scale, energy density, what a great position to be in. So very good.
Well, we're on the Take Charge podcast, so I think most people will believe in this lithium ion or battery powered future more broadly, and I certainly believe that. I think even though EVs are maybe hitting what appears to be a headwind, I think EV adoption will continue. Electrification of all sorts of devices will continue, ranging from small scale devices all the way to transportation or next generation transportation like eVTOL. And so the need for better batteries is something that is going to persist for many years to come. And that's one of the great things about Anthro Proteus is we're not married to any specific application or any specific chemistry, and the tunability of this electrolyte and its drop-in nature is going to really allow us to position ourselves to make sure that we can help accelerate that electrified future wherever it kind of goes over the next decades.
The next question's slightly different. It's not technical. This person has asked how the new administration change, how has that changed Anthro's direction and kind of growth speed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I believe that lithium-ion batteries are an important part of the energy infrastructure more broadly. Lithium-ion batteries are an important part of making all sorts of devices, ranging from defense applications all the way to, EV applications. And I think prioritizing the ability to produce these batteries domestically is something that is important, regardless of the administration or regardless of who's in charge. And I think actually there is pretty wide bipartisan support for making sure we're onshoring these important energy technologies. And so our plans haven't changed as part of the new administration. And we just hope that whoever is in charge at any time will prioritize this domestic manufacturing imperative and making sure that we're not only able to produce all of the materials that are critical for our energy economy, but also making sure that we are investing in the next generation of those technologies with things like Anthro that can provide so many advantages over kind of the conventional materials that are being produced today. So it hasn't changed our plans, and actually we continue to be excited at the support we see for the imperative for onshoring some of this manufacturing.
And the final question from the community, which was the person I mentioned who focuses on flexible and bendable batteries. So as you know, the capacity of lithium batteries drops significantly at temperatures below zero. Given the ongoing research in this area, I'm curious to know if David has any recommendations or insights into the future of low temperature electrolyte research.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it goes back a little bit to kind of the myths and facts we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Typically when people will see kind of a polymer-based electrolyte or a gel or a ceramic-based electrolyte, they'll say, oh, that thing must be lower rate capable. It also must be worse at low temperatures. What we found at Anthro is that the ability to use the polymer backbone in combination with other additives and other molecules can actually allow us to get really good low temperature performance, because we can use some molecules that can't be used in kind of a conventional liquid electrolyte, some specific additives and some specific formulations. And so I do think that the ability to create these low temperature electrolytes involves kind of balancing this trade-off between the electrolyte moving really fast at low temperatures, but also making sure it's not highly volatile, doesn't gas a lot, and is not really unsafe at kind of ambient conditions. And so I would say, while I can't disclose any of the specific formulations we're using, I think rational design of these electrolytes and creating advanced custom electrolytes, whether it's polymer or ceramic or liquid, will enable this kind of improved low temperature performance. And the real challenge is making sure that we do that without sacrificing too much of the kind of ambient temperature performance or the high temperature stability. And so that continues to be a challenge, but I do think advances in polymer architecture, both at the additive level and at kind of the broader level, like we're doing at Anthro, we're kind of reimagining what these electrolytes look like, will unlock superior low temperature performance over time.
Hopefully that answers their question, David. Thank you very much. And then we're on to the last one, which is a question from a former guest. The former guest didn't know who they were going to ask it to, and you obviously don't know who it is. And it's not the most recent one, so you can't guess who it is. But this person has asked, given the current challenging landscape in the battery industry, what characteristic do our leaders need to possess the most of?
Yeah, I think this is obviously something I think a lot about. I think for our leaders, both kind of at the company level and at the political level, I think it's really important to have a balance of determination or a steady hand of following things through and not giving up when things are challenging, and also being prudent at the same time. And so let's decide what bets we're going to make. Let's decide what kind of scale we want to go to. And once we decide, we need to really make sure that we follow through. But let's not overcommit ourselves and try to do everything all at once. I think that's where a lot of the battery industry has faced trouble. But we can do it in the States. We can manufacture in the States. We will be able to develop these advanced technologies. We will be able to create these really amazing facilities. It might just be a little bit more challenging and more expensive than people would like. But I think the worst thing is if we don't have a steady hand and we don't provide a clear pathway for it. things like incentives and workforce creation and job creation. And it doesn't allow companies to have the long-term plans that they need to have in order to have this domestic manufacturing and this advanced technology development happen in the United States. So I think it's really important to make sure that we are kind of having a steady ship. And at the same time, I think it's important to not trust companies or not trust new technologies to kind of, build more than they need to kind of for the first bite. And so maybe let's finish the first gigafactory before we start building the second gigafactory, for instance. And so there's this balance of kind of risk that needs to be demonstrated, but I don't think it means being overly cautious, and I don't think it means giving up on projects when they might not go according to plan. And so I think that would be my recommendation to leaders in the industry as well as political leaders on making sure that we are be able to scale up effectively over the next couple of decades.
I'm pretty sure any CEO in any industry would claim that every landscape's challenging. There's never an easy phase. So kind of what characteristics you need to lead with, full stop. But no, thank you, David. I really appreciate coming to the show today. And it's really great to see, a company like Anthro making progress and winning, because unfortunately negative press is the stuff that gets the headlines, but there's so much positive going on in the industry. And it's really great to talk about it with you today. So good luck with the current projects, and hopefully that picture that you painted in 5 years' time comes true and looks even better than you anticipated.
Well, thanks so much, Jamie. Thanks for having me. It's been a great discussion, and I really appreciate it.